we're here today with my friend Julie Baker, who's the Executive Director of the Center for the Arts. Welcome, Julie. And Judy Nielsen, who is with the Superintendent of Schools as Assistant to the Superintendent of Schools. She's representing education. Welcome, Judy. And Jon Blinder, who is the President of the Board of the Nevada County Arts, which is our local arts council, directly sort of connected to the California Arts Council, and Jeff Pelline, who is the publisher of Sierra Food, Art, and Wine, as well as the new director for Go Nevada County, our local tourism site.
Thank you.
So welcome, everybody. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about what it is that social media is, what we're looking for in social media, in particular in rural counties. The Digital Media Center has a plan to develop a series of NINGs sort of around communities of interest. And what defines a community of interest nowadays is something different than where we have to, where we can geographically go. It's not just going to the coffee house or going to the center or going to a gallery. It's really about trying to meet and develop discussion online about matters of interest to our community. So the Ning model will develop around things such as sports and recreation, seniors, what else do we have? Different communities of interest that are intended to really develop more communication and get more people involved in our community in the arts. So it's important that we recognize that the concept of the Ning is not to replace something that already exists. For example, it's not a website, but it's actually a community forum developed to really get people who have not maybe been engaged in the arts more engaged in the arts, and or to provide a forum for artists, artisans, and people who are interested in the arts to connect, and particularly to collaborate. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is collaboration. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to just kind of jump off and make have a few questions about what it means to collaborate and how we can utilize models such as the Ning to collaborate better. So I guess I'll go to Jeff first and put the question to Jeff. And so my first question, Jeff, is if collaboration is such an absolute must in this day and age, funders demand it and everybody is talking about it and everybody's trying to stretch those dollars and leverage the dollars that we do have. How do you see collaboration happening amongst the different arts groups in our area? And in particular, how do you think that we could utilize social media?
Well, first of all, I think that social media has revolutionized our ability to communicate in a small community like this. It's inexpensive, it's ubiquitous, almost everybody is using a computer now. There's so many different platforms. There's websites, there's Facebook, there's Ning, and a lot of these platforms have the ability to communicate with each other. So I think that there's great opportunity. I think the key is collaboration, like you say, there's a term they use in Silicon Valley, it's called co-opetition, and it means that while you may be competing on some, 5 to 10 foot level or something like that, at the 30,000 foot level, you're cooperating, and in a small community like ours, it's imperative that we all work together because rather than having Grass Valley versus Nevada City versus Truckee, we're a county of 100,000 people, so we need to work together.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit about how can we utilize a forum such as a Ning to develop more community around arts, and for your organization, for example, Julie, what would you see would be the potential of a platform like this?
Well, let me talk first about collaboration, because it's something at the center we've really implemented in the last year. And one of the really important things is that we are a small community. We are a rural community. We don't have large corporations here that we can look to for support. There are funders for rural communities, but not as many, and so for a rural area. So it's really essential that the nonprofits work together. And I think there's some number that's about 360 nonprofits or something in our own community. And there's just no way with 100,000 people in our entire county that we can all be successful and sustain, especially in this really difficult economy. So one of the things at the center, which is a performing arts center, we do a wide variety of programming, almost 200 performances a year. We've implemented an opportunity for other nonprofits to collaborate with us on large events, and every time it's sort of customized to what makes sense for them. And then in 2012, we'll be giving actually a different nonprofit an opportunity to partner with us on a monthly basis, and we're actually asking the community to make that choice. And the way we're doing that is we put it out on Facebook, and we did an online survey. So currently, we've got about 130 different votes right now for we only have 12 slots available for nonprofits to be selected, and that is the community is making that choice. We are not making that choice. It's really based on how the community wants to vote on that. So that's one aspect of it. And then once we've selected those 12, they will be on our website, they'll be on our Facebook page, they'll be in our lobby. There still is that human-to-human contact that people still very much desire. And they'll be able to really expand their base and their audiences and awareness of their organization in that way. So that's one of the things that we're implementing currently.
I really, we talk a lot about, especially when we're in the performing arts, as Julie is and I am as well, we really need to listen to what our community is interested in. And I really feel like the Ning and other social media give us the capacity to be able to have that sort of that conversation instead of it being us broadcasting out all of the time. It changes when you have social media to being a back and forth conversation. What do you think about that, Jon?
Well, in relationship to what Nevada County Arts does, we kind of came into being for what we felt was a vacuum of collaboration in the community, and we are beginning to use we've been using the Facebook as a social network site and announcing information throughout the county on our website and through Facebook. But we really, kind of to echo what Julie is saying, we really felt the vacuum of collaboration and felt like if we could get everybody in the same room to start talking together to understand what each other's plans were, to create an economy of scale that just wasn't happening before in this community. It's been really gratifying over the last couple of years, the work that we've been able to do. We've brought every one of the major arts organizations into it. We're starting new committees with literary and visual artists in the community. So we're really trying to bring everybody into the fold. So working with a Ning like this, as it creates a deeper and broader information, working with us and getting the information out, it sounds like a very exciting potential new area, new way for us to be able to reach artists and reach the community, to connect to how important the arts are in Nevada County. That's a big deal for Nevada County Arts, is really, not just branding for tourism's sakes, but branding for the soul and spirit of the community, and to get everybody to recognize what we really have here and what we've been having here for a long, long time.
I'd love to talk about two things that I can pull out of that, and one is sort of the heart and soul of our community. And of course, the heart and soul of our community, for many of us, is our youth. And so I wanted to ask Judy about how she thinks that utilizing platforms like this and how the Digital Media Center can really help sort of bring more art into the schools, and how can we work with the school district in order to partner with community-based organizations.
In terms of technology, there are all kinds of things going on, and one thing that's happened and is happening currently with the Digital Media Center at the head of the helm is working in particular with the high school and making a huge step forward in educating the educators in our community because they aren't up to snuff. And so we are in that process right now, and Paul Minicucci is being incredibly active and the catalyst between the Digital Media Center and the educational arena. So that's a huge step. One thing that's happening, I know Grass Valley School District got, I believe it's over $1 million grant to take a step forward. In terms of the children, this is such an intuitive thing for them. When I was the director of the Imaginarium, we did I call them virtual reality field trips. And where we as adults were on the learning curve, the kids would just come in and it was just an automatic thing for them to relate to this interactive live thing that was happening, and they just suck it up. They love it. Yeah. They love it. And so in that regard, you've got the buy-in from the students.
I can only imagine what that would be like too if we could utilize the Ning technology of giving kids a place to connect with people that maybe are doing things that they're interested in doing, creating mentoring opportunities with artists, filmmakers. I know that, for example, one of my daughters is like really, really excited and interested in filmmaking. And if we had a platform, for example, where you could kind of mentor or hook up with somebody who would be interested in kind of seeing her along her way or teaching her something, that would be an incredible opportunity for her. Just to go back to Jeff, talking about how could social media and this sort of a platform be helpful for tourism to our county? Because we did bring that up. I mean, we are creating something here, of course, of lasting value for the people who live here. But this county does rely on tourism as one of its economic engines. And so, what do you see as being a value in terms of growth of tourism?
Well, first, I think people need to understand that the arts are a real catalyst to tourism. Sometimes we think of a place as being a catalyst, whether it's historic downtown or the Empire Mine. But art events that we have here, as well as the galleries and the artists themselves, can be a draw for people. And I think folks need to understand that people who come up to visit a gallery or to see the work of one of their favorite artists will also have dinner here and maybe spend the night and spend some money in some other shops. So the economic impact of the arts on tourism here is significant. As for social media, what's great about it is there are no boundaries. You know, historically, newspapers and magazines to some extent circulate in a fixed area, whereas the internet, knows no boundaries. So, using some of the social media sites as well as websites to communicate your message is something that you can, reach Roseville, you can reach Reno, and, in our magazine, we had a customer call us because she had seen us promoting the Mandarin Festival. She had moved here from Texas, and she had always sent those ruby red grapefruits to her friends, and now she had learned about the mandarin, so that was going to kind of be her new fruit of the season, if you will. And she learned about that through a social media connection. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and it's there's no barriers to entry, and the cost is inexpensive. So it's really a boon to communities like ours.
I would just want to go back to Jon again. And how do you see this concept being sort of complementary to the concept of an arts council, and having that public community forum. Do you see that as complementary to an arts council and collaboration?
Well, this is a very new idea, and so I'm kind of curious to see how it unfolds. It intuitively sounds like a natural. The notion that one of the things that Nevada County Arts does, we have a website and Facebook, which gets us out into the world. This is yet another way to provide information. We started, in very small terms, trying to do things very well, but in a very small scope. And I think this has the potential to add to the scope and the reach of what we're trying to do in a really interesting way. But I'm just learning about this as well. We've had a very effective Facebook campaign throughout our last year or so, and people seem to be really interested in that. And as Jeff so eloquently put it, it's everywhere. And so how do we plug into the next phase? It's all moving so quickly, and to plug into what appears to be a natural ally to what we're doing just seems like a natural.
Sometimes there's the perception that social media or broadcast performances actually get in the way of live performances. What do you think about that, Julie? Do you think it's something that things can work together? And I'll give you an example. They're broadcasting live at the Metropolitan Opera. And we've had some live broadcasts of theater here as well. Do you think that draws people away, or does that entice them? Does that kind of excite them and grab at their interest?
I think a couple things about that. First of all, in our community, the Metropolitan Opera will not be coming live to Nevada County, so I don't think there really is any choice. So the beauty of it is that now expands the audience for the Metropolitan Opera, which is, as we know, classical music and everything else has been struggling. So I think it's great that it gets it into theaters in Grass Valley, and a child that would never have the opportunity to go to the Metropolitan Opera would have an opportunity to see it here, and to see it for a very inexpensive price and in a comfortable place. So I think that's terrific. I think I have no fear that people are going to stop going to live performances, because nothing can compare to that shared experience that you have in a digital way is one thing, and I think that has grown, and we all do it, and it's really important in terms of creating dialogue, in terms of sharing information, in terms of marketing information, and certainly our children today are absolutely they know how to do this, and they're going to make videos, and they're going to put those online, and some you're going to want to tell them not to put online, especially as a parent, but it is an important way for them in this Ning potential for them to be able to, as someone who actually buys talent and presents it in a performing arts center, I often am asked, how do you choose these artists? And we're going to get to a place where you're not going to see as many managers and agents in the future. It's going to become where an artist is going to be able to speak directly to a presenting organization or producer, and that's an exciting next step for the artist, for the creation process. But I have no fear that live performance is going to go away, because I think all of us can say there's nothing that compares to that. I think what we have to get used to, though, as arts presenters, is that people are going to be tweeting when they're sitting in their seat. And instead of getting up and telling people to turn off their phones, you need to tell people to actually communicate while they're sitting there, and get on there and say, I can't believe this performance is so great, and if the tickets are still available, come on down. Or and all of that is how we build audiences and communicate in today's world.
So most of the conversation we've spent has been around performing arts. Let's take a moment and turn the conversation to visual art. And what is the role of social media with visual artists, especially in a community like this where we have, I think somebody told me, and it came from you, Jeff, that we have more artists per capita than any other place in California. any other county in California. So what is social media hold for visual artists?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great marketing tool. The Nevada County Arts website has a new artist registry, which allows artists to build a page, basically, that presents their biography as well as their artwork. And so folks who wouldn't normally be able to access that much information about an artist are able to do so. I think the other benefit of social media is for artists to communicate with each other in a way that they can not just share text, but they can share photos and their ideas. And I think, to me, that's what's exciting about this Ning project, is that you have an opportunity for a real grassroots conversation to go on between artists to share some ideas about their work. So I think it works on so many different levels, but all told, it's really a positive for a small community like ours.
Julie used to be in the visual arts. You have anything to say about visual arts and the use of social media?
Yeah, I owned an art gallery for, I don't know, 12 years or something. Worked with a lot of artists, and I think, again, it's a terrific marketing tool. I think it's a great way for them to get the word out inexpensively about what, an open studio, a new work, a breakthrough that maybe they're having in terms of process. I think it's also a great way for them to learn about grant opportunities, things that they're going to apply for in order to juried shows, all of that sort of stuff, where they can share that kind of information. There's expensive ways to list that and get in, subscriptions to things like that. But once now we get into a community where people are sharing that information instead, and arts, Nevada County Arts is doing that for visual artists in our community and posting that on Facebook. I think that is really, really valuable to an artist, especially, again, in a rural community, because it's not going to be in your local newspaper about a juried show in San Francisco, for example.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, would love for if you'd add something to
One
that.
simple comment is that artists tend to be on their own most of the time. And so our great hope is that by creating this artist registry, and potentially with this Ning and this new technology and new way of doing things, that we'll be able to get them to kind of come together more and realize the greater power that they'll have working as a community, as an artist community, instead of just as individuals. Although that remains to be seen. It's a challenge to get them, to come out and work together in that way. But that's my great hope, is that they'll see the power in working together.
We just watched a really powerful video about a local artist and her abstract workshop. Lil McGill puts on regular abstract workshops for members of the community, and it's basically a day where you come and you play with paint. And one of the things that actually struck me more than almost anything out of that was a group of people working together, and the ease with which they had, but also the sense of doing something with purpose together, as opposed to, as you're saying, sort of working in your studio by yourself. It was kind of interesting. It was a very different way of looking at something and doing something, and it was really exciting. And I know that she does these for kids, because we've seen those around the county as well. So getting back to Judy, what do you think about, sort of, how can we engage kids more in the arts, and what is our role as people who are belonging either to performing arts organizations or working with the media center? How can we get kids more engaged with art and have that same sort of feeling that we just watched in that video?
Well, I would like for people to be aware that out of 50 states, California is number 46 in money allotted for the arts per student. And so once again, Nevada County is an incredible place that within the state of California, we're number 46 for money for the arts. But we have such an incredible wealth of talented people that are willing to share. And we have so many, as you mentioned at the beginning, nonprofits that touch on every entity, but certainly a lot of them are in the arts. And so the superintendent of schools office has an associate superintendent of curriculum, Stan Miller, and then I'm his assistant. And 10% of my job is to support the arts in the schools and be the liaison between the community and the schools. So I can tell you that in terms of ethics and values, we feel that every student should have a solid art curriculum, just as a baseline and an attitude and a premise. We believe that, we feel that, we know that, and for many reasons. Not just the intrinsic value of art, but also when kids are exposed to and involved in art, they truly are more well-rounded. They're creative thinkers. They know how to process. They work as a team better. They can reflect. And there's all kinds of research that supports that they do better in math. All these kinds of things. So the issue always comes down to money. And I can say that we have organizations like Music in the Mountains that have a huge focus on education, and we will do whatever we can to collaborate and be a part of that. Watching this video on color and knowing that is about a local artist and that it ties into the National Gallery. I mean, all of that is so exciting. It's just so exciting. And so then I'm thinking, oh my God, how do we incorporate that? And so I'm thinking, wow, what if, the kids got to see that video, and then the next day there was the artist not in the classroom, but maybe being able to provide an art lesson or to talk to those kids personally. I can tell you the letters that kids write to the organizations that support them are amazing. The kids just write the most amazing things. They are so inspired. They are so taken. They are so turned on. Just today I was reading a letter. Just one short thing was there was a student that said, I was sure that I did not like music, and I wanted to thank Music in the Mountains for coming to my school. I found out that I actually like music, and I'm so excited to know that about myself. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, one of my favorite letters that we received last week, and this was for the Music Live program, was, you guys are awesome. I think you should open a business and go on iTunes, which I thought was really pretty funny. It was pretty great. And I think that is really going to be very important, that partnership with community-based organizations like the Center for the Arts, like Nevada County Arts, like even the tourism website. I think that all these things working together are going to be absolutely critical when we talk about educating our youth, because the schools, our schools here in California are not able to provide that at this point, and it's our responsibility to be able to give that to our kids. So I just wanted to thank everybody. I know this is a really broad-based discussion, but I wanted to thank everybody for kicking it off today. I think there's a lot more to be said. I hope that we find out more about what social media and the NING can do for it. And so thanks very much. And back to Paul Minicucci.
Thank you very much to one and all. We appreciate the discussion, and it was very, I think, valuable and far-reaching and far-ranging, because it has to be, and I think we're going to learn as we go how to fit these parts together in the most efficient way. But it's all about building community. It's all about building a cultural community and getting people involved in that and in the arts. So Craig, thanks for coming up, first of all. I really appreciate it. For those of our viewers who don't know, Craig was appointed the director of the California Arts Council about 6 months ago, 8 months?
August 15th.
August 15th, whatever that is.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? I want to start out by saying I first met Craig, I think it was in Santa Barbara, but it might have been Sonoma, back in 1977. Craig was working with Victoria Hamilton in Santa Barbara on the opening of the Santa Barbara Arts Commission.
The Santa Barbara County. Arts Commission. That's right.
Right.
I did the first cultural master plan for the county, and Victoria was the first employee.
Right. And then Craig launched off into the cable business for quite a while, and then I know came back and headed up the Long Beach Arts Agency.
Right. I had a detour from the arts, though I kept my fingers in the arts even as I was in the cable business, but 26 years there, and then had the fortunate opportunity to come back in nonprofit arts. And as you say, the Long Beach Arts Council ran that for almost 3 years, and then was contacted about this opportunity at the state, and delighted to say I'm in a job that I love so far and feel very good about.
Yeah, very good. We're pleased, and I was thrilled to see your appointment, really, because for some of us, I think, the last administration did not reach out to certain communities in our state, and particularly in regard to Northern California and rural. And Craig did at one point, I'm trying to remember whether it was running the Rural Arts Network.
Rural Arts Services.
And
yes. Actually got its start through a grant from the California Arts Council.
Right.
So I feel, deep in my history is this agency, which
Right.
I now run. So I mean, how unique is that? And,
Right.
And so it's been a very important part of
And
my
I think that's why
history.
we're so pleased in a community like ours, because you really have demonstrated over the years that you understand the needs and the challenges we face in a community like this.
Well, no question. And I think what's remarkable about all rural communities is that these are communities that are used to making their money go long distances. Every dollar has to be stretched, and people use that creative expertise in all their world, in all their work. And so we as a state agency have done a lot, and you were part of this history to create arts councils, state local partners.
Right.
And so in 50 counties now, not 100% of our all California counties, but virtually all, there is a state local partner. And so the vast majority of those, of course, are in rural counties and far-flung communities. And so we understand, I think deep in our bones is a commitment to that continuation.
Right. It may come as a surprise in hindsight that creating a state-local partnership was not always the most popular move that we made at the Arts Council. And when I was there in the 70s with the Brown administration, heading up that effort with Peter Coyote as the chairman, and we actually visited 57 counties of the 58. It was quite a tour. But I think you brought up the main point, which is people in the arts tend to look at philanthropy as one way to assemble funds and resources, and indeed it is, but we were more about connections and actually becoming part and parcel of what people would think a county or a city should provide for the citizens, cultural services. And that concept was pretty new at that time. I think it's probably a little bit more believed in these days, because we're in a particularly I would say a fairly conservative county, and our board of supervisors, I think, get it pretty well that that the arts are an important part of tourism and need to be supported, even though we don't have a lot of money to put that way.
No, my visit here is really part of my education and getting up to speed on this county. But my sense is, from the conversations we've heard here tonight, that people do get it, and that there's an excitement and a commitment to making all those connections. So I think you're way ahead of the game in terms of some of the counties that I've seen, and there certainly isn't always good alignment between elected officials, business leaders, and arts and culture, tourism leaders, certainly, as you would think there would be, because we get it. We sometimes get caught preaching to the choir. But when you have a community like this, where something really special is going on, then we should be doing our part of the state to try to encourage it.
Right. And we certainly do appreciate that. Now, tell me a little bit about the impact that working in cable TV and access television, local television, had on you. How did that change how you looked at the arts?
Well, early on, my introduction to cable television was when I was still working in the nonprofit arts world in Santa Barbara. And when small format equipment, video equipment, was becoming cheaper and available, and we were seeing that the cable television business was providing entree to artists and nonprofits to start getting involved in television. That was a very exciting and heady time. And so my first goal was to make sure that artists had access to the local cable studios and the local cable company. So before I made my step into the business, that's where I came from.
Right.
And so my earliest work in that area was to develop community studios. And in the earliest days of a studio I helped build in Norwalk, some of the most amazing young Latino artists who are working in performance, doing some of the most avant-garde work. In fact, they today, a group called OSCO, is represented in the Pacific Standard Time exhibits that are happening throughout Southern California now, funded by the Getty Foundation. And I was there in those early days, seeing that artists, when given the tools, another set of tools, to them it was new. Now we take a little more for granted, but at the time, that was a perfect marriage of my arts interests and my newly acquired media interests. And that's informed me all the way along. And I've tried during my cable television career to make sure that artists and nonprofit arts groups had access to those tools.
How does the state, if at all, encourage digital media, do you think? Have you had any experience or be able to talk to folks in the Brown administration about that?
Not so much the administration. I know that certainly digital media is considered an important candidate. This organization itself demonstrates that coming to the Arts Council, coming certainly for grant support. But I think where we stand now is we're at a moment where digital media is really in the sweet spot of what's happening in CTE, career tech education. In the recent bill that was passed that many of us fought against, actually, that Warren Furutani sponsored, where arts could be substituted for career tech education. And what we perhaps could have done in hindsight is embraced that notion and seen digital media as the bridge.
Right. I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's exactly how I felt about it, which is, digital media encourages, digital media nurtures arts experiences, but digital media arts is also a discipline unto itself, and digital
Absolutely.
media is a tool just like a brush and paint is.
Well, that's right, and certainly there's a long history since the 70s of artists gaining access to video. Bill Viola, who's one of the most incredible internationally regarded artists who works exclusively in digital media, is in Long Beach. So I got to know Bill, and certainly he represents a sort of penultimate use of the tools. And I think the young people who we've reflected on that you work with, they're digital natives.
Right.
They grew up with it in their earliest moments, and so everything we do now, I think, to build on that bodes well for our future.
Right. I think that's one of the disconnects. But after I got out of the Arts Council, I've been working in digital media since 2005, actually, when I got back from Virginia Tech. And what we learned was there's a disconnect that goes on in a kid's mind when school, which is supposed to be about creativity, imagination, and learning, uses tools from the 19th, let alone the 20th century. And if you dare bring a phone into your classroom, you're liable to get suspended. If you collaborate on a work project, that would be considered cheating. And I think digital media is the bridge into the 21st century, where we can teach kids those values of hard work and discipline through this medium as a connective device. It connects people together, and surely they know. The kids are really savvy. You can't fool them. And if school is way outside their realm of experience in every other part of their life, they're going to drop out, and that's what they do.
No, and I think some of the most important work yet ahead is to really draw a very direct line to connect those dots. And so I think that's an area of research that we need to understand. Where's the best work being done? Communities like this and others where there is an active digital media effort to touch young people. And we need to be studying those and promulgating the learnings from that such that we can really convince people. It's a shame that they need convincing, but they do. And perhaps what has to happen is that you and I have to get out of the way and turn over the reins to younger people who are, as I say, it's natural. They're natives in this field.
Right, they get it at a level that we just can't imagine. And anybody, we used to say, you probably remember when you go into a conference and people said, now, if you have a VCR at home and it's blinking 12, would you please stand up? That was sort of a surrogate shorthand for, Luddite. and nowadays, the bar has been raised so much higher than that. I mean, people are producing little videos on their cell phones. It's an amazing transformation.
It's funny you brought that up. I was invited to talk, and the person who had set up the talk said, Craig's going to teach you how to get that blinking off your VCR. And so it was a running joke during the panel. The VCR was blinking, and the panel was wrapping up. And so the moderator said, so Craig, how do you do it? And I pulled out some black tape and just put it right over the front, because I didn't have a clue on how to stop it from blinking either. So.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about leadership at the state Arts Council. Now, we have in Tom Torlakson a friend of the arts, and the first governor I heard actually run on an arts platform, actually put some money into ads that said, I want to bring arts back to the schools. Right. I think we have a tremendous opportunity, don't we, to make some change in education?
We do, and it's a huge moment. Many of us think that this is a unique window, and Torlakson is absolutely part of it. But you obviously also have in Governor Brown, even with all the constraints of a state budget that's a mess, you have a governor who gets it and believes in it. You've got a state superintendent. The state PTA right now is headed by a woman, Carol Kosovar, who came up through the ranks fighting for arts in San Francisco for her children. And she's developed some wonderful programs. And we forget, the PTA is 1 million members strong. So you got state superintendent, you got the governor, you got new leadership at the Arts Council. And by the way, I'm not pointing to myself, I'm pointing to our council right now, voted formally to take 50% of our grant giving and devote it to lifelong learning and arts education, and that commitment continues. You've got new leadership at the California Alliance for Arts Education, Joe Landon, who came up through policy side and now is leading that organization. You've got a coalition under the banner of what we call Create the State. And I don't know if you've been watching it, but what we've done is pull together a group of powerful stakeholders in arts education to say, we cannot miss this moment. And so we have another convening coming up at the end of March, which will pull together business, education, electeds, certainly the arts community, to say what are the critical policy issues that we need to change. Certainly fighting for arts in the Common Core and maintaining the standards we have. We want to tackle this crazy notion that we lost a dance and theater credential. When the original legislation was written, as it's been explained to me, it referred to art and music, and that got improperly interpreted as meaning the visual arts and music. So we have those two credentials, but we still don't have a dance or a theater credential. That's wrong. We need to fix that, and it's been a perennial argument.
I have scars all over my body trying to fight that fight.
I know you have.
It's true.
But that's just one example of, I think, the window we have to make some of these things, fix many of these things that have been plaguing us. Yeah,
because I think what people don't realize is they think art is disappearing from the school simply because leadership doesn't want it in there. And that school boards don't want to see art leave the school, but there's so many systemic barriers. Testing, the AGG requirements, where we only have one opportunity to get an F requirement in fine arts for most kids. And if they're going to UCLA or Berkeley or wherever, they are going to not be able to take more art than they want, let alone digital media. And so there are barriers. When you don't have a dance instructor and you don't have a credential, you can't have a dance class.
Well, and you put your finger on it. I mean, there isn't much disagreement now that whatever the best intentions were of No Child Left Behind, it's devastated education on many levels, and certainly the focus on testing, and focused on the testing in just math and English. So it's not only hurt the arts, it's hurt science, it's hurt a number of important topics, history as well. And so we've lost sight of what's important in creating whole children and creating a well-rounded child, and not a well-rounded child in the sense of just creating good people, but really making smart thinkers, whole decision makers who problem solve, as artists do every day. Artists at their best are about problem solving. And so those skills put to the benefit of children every day is going to make them a better student. They're going to stay in school longer. We've seen the studies that say a child with 4 years of high school music scores 100 points higher, at least on their SAT scores. So it should be a no-brainer. But indeed, the system works against it, and we need to find a way to lower those barriers, and the state has a role.
Right. When I was my last iteration at the Arts Council in the Gray Davis administration, we did get to talk to Gordon Shaw, who was from the Mind Institute, who did the Mozart study. And it's a really interesting history because people very much misinterpreted Mozart makes you smarter. But what Gordon Shaw was talking about was deep inside the operating system of the brain is this thing called the sodium-magnesium exchange. And if you will, you have a bunch of circuits, and they get closed. The piano sonata for the piano sonata for two pianos that Mozart had, that he used, happened to be the perfect stimulus for opening spatial reasoning in the brain. And he studied. He was not an artist or a musician. He was a physicist. So he was trying to find these things out. And what Gordon said was, he said the irony of ironies is that what will save the arts in school is going to be science. It's going to be the brain science, and that this century is going to be about exploration of the brain, not of space. So I look forward to using that kind of argument and finding the evidence there that arts are absolutely essential. Well, you may recall when I was working in the legislature that Senator Mello, my boss, had done the correctional art program, which we guaranteed did longitudinal study, was saving the state hundreds of millions of dollars a year, because people who were, did not recidivize as quickly if they had a solid background in the arts, because they were able to come back into the community with new skills, seeing themselves in a different way. And yet it's just such a hard thing for policymakers at the state to grab, and get their hands around it.
The good news, Paul, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that's a commitment we now have, is to try to recreate some of the glory years of arts and corrections. California was known internationally for the quality of its programs in bringing artists not only to adult correctional facilities, but youth facilities as well. And you're right. The research, which dates back to 1983, is still the best research about the lowering of recidivism rates. So what we've done actually is we're piggybacking on work that Alma Robinson is doing with California Lawyers for the Arts. You know Alma. And Alma has been a champion for that effort. And she has gotten funding to work with some of the county sheriffs now with a realignment effort where prisoners are being pushed back to county sheriffs. And with that is coming some money. And luckily, the money, the state at least did the right thing by saying, look, once we give you prisoners, we're not going to tell you how to spend the money. So to the extent that we've got sheriffs who also get it, that the arts can be a rehabilitation tool at the local county level, we're going to work on some model programs to reinvigorate the arts and corrections. And State Senator Curran Price from Los Angeles, who heads the Joint Committee on the Arts, we just met with him this week, and he's going to be holding a high visibility hearing in this new legislative cycle to talk about the ways that we can support that effort to bring the arts back into that world.
We should bring Bill Cleveland back from.
Well, in fact, you stole my punchline. Bill and I, for your viewers, Bill was really the internal staff leader and really recognized as the leader of arts and corrections efforts at the state. Now lives up in Washington State. But I saw Bill recently at a conference, and as we got excited together about this, he said, "Craig, if there's a hearing, I'll pay my way down if I can help." So I think we'll have Bill down to help us with that.
Yeah, that would be great. He was a pioneer in not only arts and corrections, but artists in other places, and pioneered work in artists in aging and elderly facilities, artists in homeless facilities,
Correct.
And making real change in people's lives through art and culture.
That's right.
It's very exciting to hear, Craig. I'm so happy. I mean, getting Governor Brown back, people, I don't think, really understand how deeply he understands these issues. I mean, at the very core of his being. And I know, funny story, one time I was deep asleep, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, Peter Coyote called up and he said, "Minicucci, get down here right away." And I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm in the governor's office." I said, "Peter, what time is it?" He says, 2 a.m. He said, "But Jerry does his best thinking at night, So I got in the car and went down there, and we spent about 6 hours talking about artists and corrections and putting that program together with Eloise Smith and the very start of that program. So the governor understands the power of the arts. And almost single-handedly saved the arts during the Prop 13 years.
Well, sure, and I remember those early days and attending council meetings, and here was a council made up exclusively of artists: Ruth Asawa, Gary Snyder, Noah Purifoy, Peter Coyote, Charlie Haid. I mean, those meetings were so fascinating, and yet it says that at its heart, at the DNA level, this state agency is about supporting artists. And so that's also one of our very specific goals, is how do we continue to support the work that artists do? So for instance, at our very last council meeting, we funded at $25,000 to the new Teaching Artists Network that came out of early development grants that were given to Alameda County, to start working on how to develop standards and curriculum materials and professionalize the work that teaching artists do in going into the schools. One of the tensions that exists, and our school districts understand this, is that when working artists go into the school, into the classroom, the tension between the classroom teacher, who may not have the same background or have the same set of experiences as the teaching artist, and yet the teaching artist comes into a setting and doesn't necessarily fully appreciate the setting that they're coming into. So that relationship is so important. So we're working at a state level to make sure that network now is going to be statewide, and we're going to continue to support the network of teaching artists.
I hope you might want to review the Local Arts Education Partnership Program that we had put in legislation, because that was the heart of it, was that tension, to try to come up with a way of figuring out what roles were what, and how to get professional artists to understand what standards are, and that they're not just, they may think that they're intuitively bringing magic to the classroom, but actually
it's not show and tell.
Yeah, it's not show and tell, and actually it is connected to a learning sequence that the kids are engaged in. So I hope somebody does take a look at that somewhere down the line. Sure. We've got a couple more minutes left. I want to come back to digital media. wearing another hat of mine, the Digital Art Studio Partnership, we've been involved in workforce development and civic engagement as two of the main issues in digital media. Speak to me. You talked about CTE because CTE it turns out that digital, this is a little story, 4 years ago there wasn't a single CTE class in digital media that met an A to G requirement. And now more than 50% of them do. 3,500 of them have come into being in the last 4 years alone. And I think that shows you the power of career tech ed. Can you speak a little bit about how maybe digital media, career tech ed will be a platform from which we can say this is an economic reality, that the arts contribute mightily to our state economy?
Well, there's some amazing work being done to quantify just how important that equation is. You're probably familiar with the work being done in LA and Orange County with the creative economy study that Otis College of Art and Design has done now for 5 years. And what those studies clearly show is that the total creative economy, this last year we dropped from second to fourth, but that's partly based on cutbacks in architecture and some of the industries that use design. But still, the fourth and most important work sector out of 65 sectors in Southern California is the creative economy. And that's an aggregation that includes both Hollywood entertainment, digital media, design, automotive design, fashion design, the traditional art organizations as well. It's an amazing part of Southern California's economy, and what we're trying to do at the state is convince Otis, and we think we've got them there now, to take the study statewide and really help tell that story. But digital media, what's the beauty of digital media is, of course, is it exists in every county. There are practitioners who are working at home and providing services to clients all over the globe. And we haven't necessarily tied them all together. But again, back to that study, it shows that in Southern California, it's the one sector that clearly has a strong growth trajectory. So if you're talking to kids and to educators about where do the future jobs are they, what are the jobs that attract our children in terms of the things they're most interested in, digital media has got to be right in the center of that. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us who have an interest in this to be part of the solution, helping push that forward. And I think we now have this opportunity with CTE, the arts education community and the arts community in general has to say, hey, we are partners.
Right.
Let's make this stronger.
Right. My friend and colleague, Kathleen Milnes, who heads up a lot of that studies you talked about at Otis, she serves with me on the statewide panel, Digital Art Studio Partnership. We've been working very hard to make that, and got pretty far down the line in the Schwarzenegger administration, but funding problems and bureaucracies kind of killed it. But I know Sunny McPeak has started a new effort at the state level, so watch and see how that grows.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And by the way, I think there are some other wonderful models. I know you're working on a model here in Nevada County, but I don't know if you know of the work that's being done through the YMCAs down in Long Beach, California, where I came from. They now have a mandate, and they've received some significant funding to replicate a model that uses college students as mentors with high school students, and they have a social entrepreneurship program where they're taking on paying clients to produce video, websites, all manner of digital media products. And I think it's another center of excellence to take a look at.
Right. There is, many good islands of excellence in digital media, particularly in Southern State. I think the question is, how do you try to take that and put it into the classroom, not only as a subject unto itself, but a means of communicating in all subject areas, because so many classes, organic chemistry, for example, at the college level is now taught using animation skills. You don't understand chemistry until you can really animate, those bonds and valences and those kinds of things. So, we look forward to, building that into the schools. We got about a minute left. Is there anybody who would like to ask one question of Craig, if they had anything on their mind that was burning issue? No?
Boy, you put him on the spot. You know,
I
it's
did.
kinda
I do that at time to time. But this is a new experiment for us. We don't really have usually a audience for our production. So, well, with that, Craig, thank you so much for coming up the Hill. I look forward to working with you on a number of issues, and I'm sure I'll be down knocking on your door. We've got some exciting things to talk about.
We do, and you're going to help us sell some more arts license plates.
Absolutely.
And
we're going to take that on.
raise $40 million for the arts. Wouldn't that be great?
I think that I think it's doable. I really do. We just have to have a concerted full court press.
1
by
in
everybody.
32 cars. That's all it takes. 1 in 32 cars. That would raise $40 million.
Right, and that is in the hands of us, not in the hands of the budget crisis or anything else. The people of California can speak and make that a reality.